Not sure if this is going to be published or publishable, but I want to get some thoughts down. It's very personal, that's partly why, and I don't want to identify or hurt others, but I do want to have it on record for at least my own benefit. My third wife became violent, and violence is a way of trying to throw you out of. Previous two wives simply left. You can't stop them leaving, and I mean, it probably wouldn't be right to think of stopping them leaving, but do you see it as different? Violence is getting you to leave, driving you out. And the state chooses to come to our rescue in that regard, may protect you to the extent that the state did in my case. They basically they put her out. I was protected and so on. That didn't strip her of rights. I mean, I felt that she had a right to half the property, of course, and so on and so forth. She actually felt she had a right to more, and so there was an endless dispute in court and so on and so forth. But my particular situation was not quite as clear as I realized. I had a right with the state to be protected, and in fact when she invited someone else into the house frequently, I would have had a right to take out an order against them, which would have been enforced by the state, as far as I know, even though she would have liked to continue to invite such person into the house. You know, the owner has a right to exclude certain people. So if one of the owners excludes, then that's enforced against the other owners, because that right is what's being upheld. It's not, in general, as I understand it, the state's intention to protect the rights of the others to have someone in that they want. Perhaps legality is different in different countries or different times in history, of course. But I could have, if I'd realised, I suppose, held my ground, both been protected, well, in which case the second issue wouldn't have arisen, or if I hadn't have been suffering from actual violence, which the state would therefore have taken action to protect me from, I could still have possibly have insisted that the person who was being invited in frequently would not be invited in. It made life untenable that such a person should be invited on the premises. It just was destroying my family and life and happiness. So it was most important, actually, that they didn't come. They did, and what happened, of course, was that I tended to go out when they came in, was the peaceful response, which I felt was right at the time, but on reflection, perhaps I should have availed myself of the rights that the state would, in all probability, have afforded me. Well, these are very serious matters, aren't they? And you can, with a peaceful intention, you know, not to involve the state, but to somehow solve what is actually an intractable situation, you can harm yourself quite unnecessarily. In hindsight, which of course our hindsight is very good compared to our foresight, isn't it? In hindsight, I should have simply taken out a protection order against this person being on the premises. Not a protection order, an order that simply insisted they not come on the premises. Yeah, a trespass order. And as soon as I had reasonable evidence and a likely case with the courts, I should have perhaps taken steps to exclude my wife. And that acceptable criteria would have been that she was being violent to me. But of course you have to demonstrate and validate this, and that wasn't too hard. There was evidence which the police took to be sufficient to put a temporary protection order on anyway. So I did apply to the court for protection order, temporary one, and it was the court imposed it immediately the next day. A very unhappy time for everyone concerned, including those that were trying to help. Out of sympathy and empathy, of course. Well, it's more than 7 years ago now, and it's only of reality when I visit such thing, and I can visit it now in the cool of hindsight, can't I? And in a position where I defend myself from being too upset about something that's now in the past. When you share a child, of course, things are kept alive because, like it or not, you have contact with the person that, the partner that no longer is, and may actually be being a menace to you still, in such ways as get round the law as you see it, but still. We trust it to God. These difficulties, we understand, are allowed by God because He loves us. And it's teaching us daily difference between good and evil, to be more and more clear on what is good and what is evil, what we value and what we avoid. That we be prepared for eternity, and of course I've said this a lot elsewhere, so I won't go into it all again here. Bless you. Thank you, Dad. Suffice to say that we are not alone in the difficulties we've had. We haven't all had the same difficulties, but my goodness, I think most of the people you pass on the street have had or are having something pretty like it in a way. Just as difficult, and perhaps it's all relative anyway to what we're used to. And I guess that view, that understanding, well, increases our empathy for others, our love and our understanding, our compassion. You know, the thing I've mentioned quite often, Mark Twain's thing, my enemy is the person whose story I've not yet understood. It does include even our enemies. It really does. If you really understood their story, their background, if you knew why they behave the way they do, well, and how they see it, well, you'd have compassion and understanding rather than want to enter into a war. Yeah. Remember, this person you're talking to may be suffering even now great difficulties. And perhaps you'd like to be sensitive to that reality, if it is so. I don't mean probing and prying into their private affairs. I mean loving them in consequence of what you understand to be their needs in the situation they may have. And You're always wrestling with an uncertainty, situation of not knowing, and making decisions in a not knowing situation. You never have the full understanding. It's not even clear what we mean by that. But this sort of awareness is an incredible defense against being judgmental, condemning and labeling. So, yeah. It's possibly the case that this person could be lovelier with your help. And that's a great incentive to being available, to being a help, not being exploited, taken for a ride. No. I don't mean that. I mean, there's the possibility that you could be a true blessing to this person. And that's worth always being sensitive to, isn't it? That you be a blessing wherever you are, to those that God brings to you. He may actually not be wanting you to bless a particular person. They may just be an incredible part of the teaching, the lessons of the class that we're in. After all, He is able to do everything without us. You're only experiencing this at all because He's clear. It's a blessing to you. Thank you, wonderful Dad. Love you. Thank you, Dad.